Hello, people. This week I read The Lies of Locke Lamora. I love the title, by the way. I think I heard about this on a podcast. It sounded interesting, and it was on sale, so I got it. I own this book. What do I think of this book? I want to give it a low 3 out of 5. It's a heist in sort of like, let's say, Heist meets Renaissance-esque feel. I'm not particularly a big fan of heist content in general. I don't know why. It doesn't appeal to me for some reason. But I didn't let it I didn't hold it against it, and I just went with it. But why is it a low 3? Low 3 meaning, if you're into that type of story, heist, let's say historical fiction, people might even kind of like it, but not too much. But you wouldn't go out of your way to read it, even if you were into it. So anyone not into it currently should sort of avoid the book. And it's not the writing. The writing is good. Maybe the editing and the choices, I'd say, if that makes sense. It doesn't happen often. Normally, a bad story is written badly and it's just all bad. But this one's sort of at odds. So let's get into it. We start with our guy, our main character, Locke Lamora, getting choked in an alley, right? Or at least trying to make it look like he's being choked in an alley. So instantly, and it's the way it's described, it's what does he say? Because it's taken a while for their target, Don Salvara, to show up. The authors, at this rate, he'd end up rescuing them from boredom. Right? It's very quick-witted. It's very funny at the beginning, and you. I guess because it's such an easy scene to see, I guess, in your head, that he's fake choking them. They're whispering to each other because they're trying to keep the ruse going for this moment when this Don passes between the alley, right? But it's the workman-like feel of it, right? Like if you were trying to lift. If you were a mover and trying to lift something heavy, but your boy's taking too long, you're like, well, what the crap's going on? Is he gonna hurry up? Can we put this crap down? But you don't want to cuss and yell and all this in a customer's house. This sort of energy, it's a fun energy that it carries throughout the first half of the book. It's very funny, very funny. The grift, the scam, they're scam artists. They're not simple pickpockets. What does he call them? The gentleman bastards. They aren't simple pickpockets. They have big, elaborate plans, and they steal big, huge sums of money from the nobles. So their idea is to impersonate a noble person, have this Don Salvara pass by, see him being choked, and come and rescue him. Right? That's what they're trying to establish. The whole thing is set up, right? So it's him. The two criminals are also his boys. He has a kid named Bug up on the roof as a lookout. I mean, this is the whole thing. And it goes in quickly. You get Bug is on the roof. He sees some guards heading towards the alley. And what does it say? He jumps off the roof into a rubbish pile to distract him. Arms out with the confidence of all his 12 years that death and injury were reserved for people not Bug. This kind of fun language, these kind of quick, snarky jokes happen a lot. Bug is hilarious. On top of this, our author gives us detail. Clothing, body shape, weight. And not just like, oh, this is a fat person, but, A fat person moves a certain way. A skinny person will move a different way. It's showing me that our Locke Lamora, I get the sense he's observant. He sees all these actions, catalogs it. But then it also is filling us in on sort of the Renaissance style Italy. Ish. It's not a Renaissance, it's not Venice. It just has that feel. So he's describing these cool buildings, canals, archways, magical glass, towers, etc. Right? You really get a sense of where you are. And you get it very quickly. Now, when the Don comes and saves him, because of course it does happen, afterwards the conversation to me feels a bit rushed. Like we go from very quickly, like I think we're still standing in the alley, to discussing business. Could this have happened? Yes. Does it break the story? No. Would it have been better just to go to dinner and then have it all hash out? I think so. I think just a few moments here or there, it could have worked out. There are certainly restaurants they could have gone to. So that part, it felt rushed to me. Immediately following this, though, so our scams worked. The fish is on the line. Immediately after this, we cut to what they call the interludes. Literally, it's chapters 1, 2, 3, and in between them, they literally say interlude. And the interludes are his past, when your Locke Lamora was young. Now, I get it. I understand why it's there. I don't even dislike it that much. It's the placement of it, a lot of it. That it's chopping up a story I'm already into. I got into it quickly. I understand the character. He comes across, I like him. I like his crew. They're all snarky, quick-witted, risk takers. I'm already into the story. And then we cut back and we're moving through his youth in a way. And it slows things down. And I've seen this, you've seen this before. This is not completely, this sort of structure isn't totally invented here in this book. But I've seen it sometimes done where the past, what did they say? The past is prologue, right? Where what happens in this sort of history relates some way. So I thought that was what was going to happen, right? So some lesson he learned as a kid gets played or used or is helpful to him in this current grift he's doing, the current scam. But that's not the case. There are long chapters, detailed as much as the rest of the book. Funny as well. He gets into hilarious situations as a kid. But they don't relate to our story. And so they're jarring. What I would have liked, now maybe, I would have liked all of the interludes. You get them all and you just shove them to the front of the book. And just tell me his history. Like, go through it chronologically. Or shove them all to the back. And just have it as like bonus content. If you liked this story, here's backstory. Either or I think would have worked a lot better. I think shoving them all to the front would have worked best. Because, of course, he's young and when he grows, things are affecting those people that he's known all this time. Right? And you know that they know him from his past, etc., etc. Now, it didn't need it at all. It could have cut all the interludes out. And the story would have gone. Even in, let's say, he would steal a lot as a kid. And he was snarky. That comes across in the conversations he has with adults, the people he knows. Just knowing that they know him his whole life and don't want to trust him holding a coin or etc. It shows it enough. Again, it didn't need the extra sell. I understood the characters and I wanted to be around them. And the interludes really broke into that. And this sort of starts to build our problem with the book. Is those details I was describing start to feel excessive unnecessary, right? And it's because, like, if you know, you got to think of your reader. Us readers are carrying this weight. Now you go interlude, and I got to hold the weight on my shoulder while your interlude passes. And I take some stuff and put it in my pocket because that's interesting. But I'm still holding this, right? There's a fatigue factor that comes with reading. It sounds odd, but it is there. And then I have to readjust it and carry on with the story and then stop again and carry it again for another interlude. So now, because I've carried it through this interlude, when you give me this big description of they have a party on barges out in the canals, they have these ladies fighting wolf sharks. Sounds cool. One of the ladies dies. A named lady, I think Cecile is her name, dies. And so now I'm like, my brain, you get tired, you want to be efficient, you start to throw out what you don't need. You start to feel that these descriptions are unnecessary, that they're excess weight that you don't have to carry. And then you start to get annoyed as a reader. This is what happens, right? So Cecile, the wolf shark fighting lady, is not necessary. She doesn't come back into the story. She's dead. The issue of the sharks comes back. But I feel like some of the impact is lost because I've already discarded that as useless. Not that I forgot about it, right? But my brain, you're like, oh, that's not important. And then when it comes back, you're like, oh, that's why I had to that's why I had to drag my feet through that mud. And so that we can get to this point. I'm like, oh, okay. You start to get this kind of energy about it. Not good. The fights are well described. Again, the humor, it carries a lot of the weight to the beginning book, but it's just an annoyance. He establishes this grift. I love this part, though. I really do. And it tells you everything you need to know about Locke Lamora. He establishes this grift of he's from a house across the sea, somewhere else. And they are famous for booze, whatever their whiskey, vintage vines are, whatever. They're going to have a problem with a war, and they want to move operations into this town. And they want to use our Don, what does that say? Don Salazar, whatever his name is, as like the main hub of it. So that, of course, it's a big money deal, but I need some cash flow over here to make it happen. Right? So they sell the guy on the grift. The guy believes that this famous house is going to use him. He's really going to bump up in the world. It's going to be a big thing. He's happy with it. Then two guys break into his house, and they act like they're from the Duke, the Duke in charge, the big cheese. Don Carlos Duke. I forget the name they use. I think it's Don Carlo. In any case, he's the head kahuna burger over here. And these guys spill the beans. They're like, that guy you were talking to that guy isn't fair white, they say. They say it's all a sham. He is tricking you. He's going to trick you out of your money. And so our guy is like, well, what do I do? He's like, keep playing into it because we're going to set up a trap for him. Right? And you're sitting there like, oh no, my boy Locke is in trouble. We cut to a different time, and Locke and his boys are getting dressed. You figure it out real quick when he's putting a fake scar on that he's one of the two that busted into this guy's house. And so instantly you're like, the brass balls on this guy to have a scam already working, then to break the scam with another scam, and then have that one feed the first one, right? Like, I'm tricking them out of their money. The stones it takes to tell them to their face I'm tricking them out of money, and then that be a lie and layer over another lie with it. It's absolutely, I'm like, this guy is a grade A scam artist. It's not just I'm getting the money now. It's He's doing it with flourish, right? He's an artist. It is absolutely hilarious to me. Who scams somebody, tells them they're scamming them, and then have the reveal be a deeper scam that will then still end up with you with all the money. I'm like, oof. Tells me everything I need to know. Everything I need to know about Locke Lamora. What we then do, again, is we then have a full description of them busting into the house, which we didn't need, right? Because I connected the dots. This then slows it down, and then of course we go right into another interlude that we didn't need either, and it's introducing me to all the other characters, Caldo, Jean, all the other characters that I already know and like. It's reintroducing me to as young people. It's very unnecessary. We cut to the court of Capabasavi. He's basically the king of thieves. They have to, of course, show up and give him a percentage of what they've got. They're sort of lying to him. They don't have a plan for the money, which is weird to me, because what thieves don't have a plan? And it ends up, like, I could live with it, right? Like, they're just grifting to grift for grift's sake. I could live with that. But then later, he develops like a bleeding heart, right? So I'm like, in the end, when he saves a bunch of people, at cost to himself, essentially, I don't understand where that bleeding heart was when you were sitting on piles of cash. You know what I mean? You don't just insta-develop a bleeding heart. It's got to be sort of one or the other. In some way. They're literally just sitting on piles of cash with no plan. The court of Barsavi. He's talking to the head king of the thieves, essentially. And that guy springs on him. I want you to marry my daughter. He says, my sons are smart, but not smart enough. My daughter's the smart one. And I think you paired with her would be really great. Right? He's throwing him for a loop because we know he loves another lady. She was not around. I keep waiting in the interludes for her to be mentioned or presented, but she never is. It's very weird. But he don't mess with any other women but his lady, even though they're on the, on the fritz right now. They're not. It's a cool out of the way love story. In any case, this Naska Barsavi, she didn't really want to marry him either. But they're like, how am I going to convince the king of the thieves to be okay with it without me saying, F your daughter, I don't care. It'll look, he won't take it well. But she's like, don't worry, we'll figure something out. And so I got a grift on the side going. And then this issue with the thieves all swirling. Cut to the Gray King. And all of it just implodes. All right, the entire story just implodes. In our story, the Gray King, it's barely mentioned a chapter or two ahead, where he's killing some of his Kappa Barsavi's lieutenants. And everyone's worried. Who's this Gray King? Who's this person killing the thieves, the grifters? Right? Because you get established, some through the interludes, that it's all kind of guilds. So there's of thieves. These are the pickpockets. These are the ones, the street urchins. These are the shipping thieves, etc. Right? So all these have heads, and some of these heads are getting killed. So we know this Gray King is dangerous. He snatches our boy Locke Lamora. It's him and what they call a bonds mage. Which, again, this is very cool. All the world building is very cool. The bonds mages are a guild, a collective, not secretive, out in the open. Oh, why did that beep? Oh, it was this one. I have multiple watches right here. Don't worry about it. I like that it chimes on the hour, okay? The bonds mages, what they did in their history is some group of them got together and they went to another mage and said, join our guild or we'll kill you. And they kept doing this till all the mages either joined or died, right? Because what one mage can take 500 other mages, right? And so now they're this power block that you can't mess with. One, because they're powerful, but two, if you kill one, all of them show up and kill you, right? They nuked one kingdom, and so they're just out there. There's this menace that Locke Lamora is like a wall you can't push over. I'm like, how's he going to get out of this? And this guy's working with the Grey King, so what he wants you can't get out of. He has to deal with it. What he wants is for Locke Lamora to pretend to be him. Then he's going to meet with Kappa Barsavi in a place, and you're going to pretend to be me. And don't worry about dying, because my bonds mage will make it so that you can't get shot by an arrow or stabbed or anything like this. So don't worry about it. And I'm like, that's weird. It's another intricacy, but I'm interested to see how Locke Lamora binds all these threads together. Cut to, and I'm like, it's almost in 3 chapters with an interlude or 2 in between, right? It's very quick. He goes back to Kappa Barsava, who's summoned, and Kappa Barsava's daughter, the Nazca, who we've known from an interlude from when she's young. But even if you didn't know the interlude, even just meeting her in that quick time, you kind of like her. But you do know her from when she's young. She's ended up dead and shoved in a barrel of urine. And I'm sitting there like, this sort of came out of nowhere. This is very, very heavy. And of course, the father's distraught. And he's like, when I find this Grey King, I'm going to kill him. And so you're like, our boy has to pretend to be him. But it's very, very heavy for how light the book is. It's a jarring moment. And even at this point, I'm thinking like, this is, the story you're writing, the story you're telling has to be able to carry all the pieces, right? So if you're having a murder mystery, if you want jokes in a murder mystery, it can be tricky because you're dealing with somebody who died. Now, again, you shift perspective. You can pull it off. I've seen it done. But when you start light, when you start with the fun, quick-witted lightness that it had, it's almost like you're pulling the rug out from under me, going to a heavy murder. And it also, because part of what I liked is this crew he had, these gentlemen bastards. They're supposed to be very, you got to be smart to pull off a heist like this. It's intricate. They're cool customers. And so it's almost a ding on him when he gets blindsided by this girl dying. There's nothing he could have done about it. But maybe there's something he should have been able to do about it, if that makes sense. They have a meeting about it, and they're, sort of saying, should I run? And I'm wondering why they didn't run, at least partially, right? Because he wants to keep everything going. He's like, I'll get through the Grey King thing, and then I'll get through the other grift, and we'll come out with 20,000 crowns, and we'll do something after that. But they're already sitting on a pile of cash. They don't do anything with it. I don't know why he wouldn't just move it and leave. Also, it's like, let's say, okay, we're not going to. In the moment when I was reading, I'm like, that's okay. That's fine. They do have years of training. Because through all the interludes, they're showing me that here's him talking to this expert on this and that expert on that. There's a guy, forget his name, like Wire or something like this. It's an older guy who's taken them all in. He's trying to form this super crew. To that end, he's paying for them to be sent to places, learn to fight, learn to trick, learn to whatever, gymnastics, all the things you'll need. So now I see them as adults. They have all these years of training. I'm like, sure, it should come to the forefront. Surely you know how to deal with a bonds mage. You know how to deal with a crooked guy on a power play or whatever he's doing, right? So you sort of rely on that. and then none of it comes to fruition. He goes to the meeting, and it's a trick. The bonds mage isn't there to help him at all. So the crew beat the crap out of him. They don't kill him, but they beat the crap out of him, and they shove him in a barrel of urine and toss him into the water. He gets saved from that by Jean and Bug. But the jig is up for some reason that we don't know. And it's worse that Locke Lamora doesn't know, because that's his whole thing. He's supposed to be smart, right? So it's making him look dumb. He then goes back to his lair, and his boys, Galdo and Caldo, are dead. Throats slit. I'm like, this is horrible. Cut to there's a guy still there. Bondmate set a trap for Jean. He comes in, and he has a crossbow, but he can't, he's got to shoot either Bug or Locke Lamora. I thought Locke Lamora would make the move. He doesn't. Bug makes the move. Bug gets shot in the neck. Bug dies. Locke Lamora takes that guy out. But then our Jean, he saves Jean. Now it's just Jean or Jean? Jean. I don't know why I kept saying Jean. Jean. He's French. Jean and Locke Lamora, the only two left of the crew. And so I'm sitting here staggered, like, why have all these people died? Why did I even, have to bother learning about them if they're just going to die? This thing's blown way out of his control. And I'm wondering how... I start to not wonder how he's going to set it right, actually. Because I'm like, this isn't... It's out of kilter. You can't let things get this out of your control. I'm sitting there, I'm like, if Bug's your apprentice, you got to send them somewhere to safety. The bonds mage can't be everywhere all the time. Hide some of your crew. He didn't do any of that. They all end up dead. And so now I'm looking at the story like, well, what am I looking at? The story ends up for the second half because you can't go back to jokes after all these deaths have happened. It just kills the mood, actually. And the mood was half the reason I liked the first half. The second half of the book is following, he calls himself Kappa Raza. It's the Gray King. He's had what happened is years and years and years and years ago, Dona Varcenza, one of the head ladies of the nobility, and Kappa Barsava teamed up and formed a peace, meaning I'm not going to attack you criminals as long as you criminals don't steal from the super rich. I'll do all the other criminal stuff and, make money this way. To establish that peace, he had to kill some people who weren't agreeing to it. One of the persons he killed was the Grey King's parents. And so I'm like, so the whole back end of the story is their story. It's the Grey King. It's Kappa Barsava and Vorcenza lady. It's a grudge match between them. That's what the whole back half of the story is. It's the Grey King in control. And the more in control he is, the less impressive Locke Lamora looks. You see what I mean? So that starts to not even be his story anymore. The back half of the story is the Grey King's story. The Grey King's revenge story. And so now everything that I read before, sort of meaningless. The gentlemen bastards went from cool to just floundering idiots. And it's because the perspective kind of changed. Or has to change. Right? I am, as a reader, forced to look through this lens now. And I guess I'm supposed to, like John Wick style, want revenge to be done. But I feel like it could have been easier. You could have kidnapped Bug. You could have done a lot of things without killing the whole crew. The fun of the first half, and in my mind, the fun of how smart he's going to be when he cinches it all together and wins, is ruined when all of his friends die. You cannot be that smart and have your friends die. So the rest he's just going to luck into? Luck's not as interesting. And Luck wasn't, he wasn't lucky to start this book. The very firm footing I had was an intelligent person in control. So they're out of money. They have to then, of course, dig into their expertise to try and drum up a new way. It's cool. It's interesting. He's talking about sort of the banking section of this city. I like it. Again, the energy's now off because everyone's dead, but he's making it happen. And in the course of the second half, he gets a hold of the bonds mage. I think the bonds mage, he can write your name on a paper and make you do whatever he wants. So he's going to have Jean kill Locke Lamora, but then because he's twisted, he changes his mind and is trying to write Locke's name. Right? He needs to know your true name. He doesn't think Locke Lamora is his last name, but Locke he thinks is his first name. So he writes Locke down and he's like, "You kill Jean. You kill your friend," because he's twisted. But it's not Locke's name. So the spell's not working. Locke stabs him in the leg. A fight ensues, obviously, and they get him pinned down. They have him pinned down. Now, he had a scorpion owl that whatever you did to him happened to the owl. And vice versa. So if he gets a leg broke, the owl feels its leg broke. Right? Etc. I'm like, you could have tortured the owl and made the bonds mage talk. Right? Because the bonds mage, he's like, "I need you to tell me information about the Great King." And he's like, "My oath doesn't allow me to." But they don't torture the owl. They torture the bonds mage, and viciously. Viciously. Now I'm like, I get that your friends died. Right? But I have to, as a reader, march through this person being just a monster. Cuts the guy's fingers off. Promises, like he's like, "Look, if you don't tell me, I'm going to cut your tongue out. But if you tell me, I'll let you go." But the guy tells him and then he cuts his tongue out anyway. Right? It's very heavy. It's not enjoyable. Our Locke Lamora now has this evil streak in him because you got to be kind of evil to hack at a person. You know? His idea being, I got vengeance for my boys, but now I also didn't kill a bonds mage, so I don't incur their wrath. Like, they might just be mad at you torturing them. You know, like that's not a hard, fast rule. You know, you would need intelligence. You would need intelligence some way to get this bonds mage. That's what I thought we were going to do, right? Like, trick the Terminator into killing a different target. I'm like, nope. Just tortured him almost to death. Then with the information, they realize the whole thing, that it's all been a revenge plot from the Grey King. He's already killed Kappa Barsava. Horribly too, mind you. He gets a snake to bite his arm off, kills his sons in front of him, and then he stabs him in the head. I mean, it's just vicious for no reason. Vicious in a way that, you know, like if you read Hannibal, right? The Hannibal Lecter books. He's going to do vicious stuff, but I'm like, I know that going in. And it's not trying to crack jokes in between. It's a very serious book. I went from fun to Hannibal serious, and I'm like, I'm not enjoying this ride. It's like being robbed in Disneyland or something. I'm like, when did this start to happen? I thought I was going to have fun today. Right? It's very unfun, to be honest. Especially since the first half was so fun. I was enjoying myself. But he ends up, it's all a plot. He's going to destroy some statues that are poison everyone, one of the nobles, and then leave, right? He has a big thing full of money on a boat. And he's just going to leave. Like I said, our Locke Lamora develops a bleeding heart. He's like, I can't. So someone now dedicated enough to hack another person apart is going to drop his revenge to save rich people that aren't his friends that he's been robbing from. That he could, you know, like, you could rob them today and skip town and not have to deal with any of their mess. I'm going to go save their lives because it's just too evil. And then hopefully I'll catch the Grey King and he doesn't get away. This is what happens. He ends up catching the Grey King. They have a sword fight. Grey King's better, but he tricks him, kills him. Revenge, right? And that's essentially that's essentially how it ends. I think they end with an epilogue, which I normally don't read, but I was giving it a chance. It's just him and Jean on a boat leaving the town. All their friends are dead and they don't have any money. And they're broskies, right? So because your boy lives. But I'm sitting there as a reader going, so none about the politics of that town now matter. And none of the interludes matter because all those people are dead. And the training they got doesn't even matter because it didn't save the day. Sort of luck saved it. A trick. You know? That's how it ends, though. They're just taking a boat, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm reading the other two. No, what do I want more of that for? There's this tendril, this slight connection to this love story on the side. But if she's friends with them from a young age, how's she going to feel when Locke Lamora got half of them killed? She's not going to be happy. Unless there's other gentleman bastards somewhere else, and he's just part of a bigger crew. Maybe that would be cool. But I don't see how I can now go to the next book and even be comfortable with jokes, knowing that at any point, the rug could be pulled out from under me, and I'm neck deep in Hannibal Lecter level seriousness. You know what I mean? You won't be able to relax enough to enjoy the joke with this uncertainty. Very odd. It was a very odd choice to me. One, in the editing of the interludes, and then two, in just the choice to go so dark. But it really mismatched the book. It really sent things through a weird loop that I don't think landed well. Revenge wasn't enough. It was enough for the friends, right? For the people that got killed. But it's not enough for me, the reader, who, I guess, committed time and energy to that first half of the book. You know what I mean? I never got the reward that I was promised from that scene one. This smart cat, right? It's sort of like Sherlock Holmes were a thief, right? But in Sherlock Holmes, he prevails. He's the smart one. I bought into it, and you rewarded me. I never got the reward on the back end. I get started, everything goes to crap, and they just leave limping out of town. So I'm like, I do not like it. That's why I gave it the rating I gave. I guess the title works, right? The Lies of Locke Lamora. I was lied to. But it is what it is. That's what I thought. Ad time? These are my books. I make money off these books. But I don't lie to you. I'm not going to pull the rug out from under you. No tricks here. Just quality. At least I hope it's quality. It's hard to tell from hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes. Okay, people. I'll talk to you all next week.